Dear friends, welcome to our new episode of Top Talk. Today, my guest is a good friend, an old friend, Victor Kipiani. Victor is the co-founder of the MKD law firm and Geocase, a Tbilisi-based think tank. Glad to see you, Victor.
Thank you so much, my good friend, and so good to be with you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
I must thank you because I've been seeking for an interview with you for a long time. We get to speak today, and in my opinion, timing is actually very good. Uh, as Georgia is undergoing an interesting period, the post-election situation, which I personally expected to be more tense, more dynamic, but it's not the case as it seems. But we'll speak about it later. First, I wanted to ask you about how the post-election situation looks like um, legally, because the Georgian Dream, an incumbent party, was declared winner. However, they are not able to reach the threshold, 100 seats, in order to officially launch a parliament. And we have received is kind of parliament in limbo. So please enlighten us, the
Yes.
mortals. You are a lawyer, but with more understandable wordings, what the situation looks like today, and what is the way out of this stalemate.
Yes, thank you, Rusif. I will get back to the legalese a bit later, but in relation to what is reality, reality is twofold, and that reality has been existing well before the elections. Those are two realities, two dimensions, two pictures. One, the picture which is seen by the opposition, and another is the picture of the reality which is portrayed by the ruling party. And that reality, which, as I've said, was existing before the election and reflected in different survey polls, etc., it continues to be the case. Yes, Georgian Dream, based, I would just to add that based on preliminary results, because we yet have to wait for official results by the Central Electoral Commission, and those results will be on the 21st of November. But obviously, they they would not be major changes from the commission itself. But it's an important when we speak about those two realities. It's very important to emphasize a critical point, as I'm saying, of the procedural democracy. I continue saying, and I keep saying, that perceptions, of course, matter, and those perceptions could be different on both sides of the nail. But when those perceptions get to the core of the politically very tense contesting process, it is
Yes.
also critical that every such perception to be backed up by strong evidential piece. Now, the opposition and a significant part of Georgian society claims that something unusual went with elections. And when I'm saying unusual went, I'm citing the President Zurabishvili. Of course, we all have such perceptions, but having the perceptions, is, as I've said, does not suffice. And you have to present us at least relatively strong case file.
Exactly.
And this is the must of the process, at least under the Georgian political framework. And that's something which the opposition parties and different domestic observers, NGOs, are undertaking at this stage. The thousands of complaints being filed with Georgian courts. Predominantly, those claims still have not been dealt positively, except of two very exceptional occasions, which took place late yesterday, when two district courts have satisfied the claims. But let's stop here, because that would take our interview into details. So that is something which is really very important, the evidentiary base. And that is important both for the Georgian voters to understand what has happened, and if anything has happened, if it happened, to what extent, and to what extent those irregularities could have an impact on the finality of the results. And on another side, that exercise matters for international stakeholders who have reacted to Georgian elections. However, most of expectations, I would say, in a different way, an expectation by most of Georgian voters that there would be challenge in terms of legitimacy of the elections that has not followed yet, and that's not surprising, because challenging the legitimacy is a very high threshold. It's a very high bar, and I think that we're now in the flux when either that strong and irrefutable evidentiary base has to be presented, which could question legitimacy of the elections and bind the authorities to call for new elections, or we should proceed as it is designated by Georgian law. And when I mentioned the legalese, just was a minor but important correction. Based on the results, preliminary results by the Central Electoral Commission, Georgian Dream, which got the majority, although not the constitutional majority they've been claiming before the election to get, but they got the majority. That majority gives them completely and unreservedly the right to convene the first session of the parliament, and also on top of that, that majority gives them to recognize the validity of the parliaments. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, those are either 88 seats or 89 seats at this point. So that is quite enough and sufficient for Georgian Dream to start the parliamentary work, even if the opposition would not be participating. And based on their statements so far, the Georgian opposition rejects their participation in the Georgian parliament. So even if Georgian opposition refuses or rejects to participate in the parliamentary work, the ruling party is completely in a position to continue with the parliamentary process.
Thank you, Victor. I understand that in case the opposition boycotts the parliament, its legitimacy will be put under a heavy question. But when it comes to legality, you just mentioned, and this was one of the things which has puzzled me since the elections took place, because many stakeholders and politicians, including President Salome Zurabishvili, claimed there were falsifications or Russian meddling. But you are a lawyer. You usually work with evidence. I have not heard any strong evidence about this so far, or maybe there are some things happening in Georgia right now at court level or inside political circles which we don't know about.
Yes. Okay. To mention, Rusif, that if we speak about the legitimacy, it's just about the political legitimacy, because about the legal legitimacy, as I've said, those it's enough to proceed with the parliament.
Yes.
So this is one point to emphasize necessarily. As for the evidences, there is a quite vast information on, and I would be just making it clear about alleged violations. And I have to emphasize alleged violations because since you're appealing to my sort of legal capacity, those violations have to be confirmed either by the electoral commissions or by Georgian courts. So those violations are those alleged violations about different types of irregularities. Different types, at least 7, 8, 9 types of different irregularities they are flowing in. So that's where we are at this point, and the process goes on, and that process has not reached yet its end in terms of completing that picture, completing that process, and presenting an overall and final case, final file, the case file. So we yet have to wait. That won't be taking too long, because, as I've said, the 21st of November is the date when the Central Electoral Commission has to declare its results and final results. And after that declaration, the Georgian parliament has to convene within 10 days. So there are quite definitive time frames within which the opposition or different civic actors have to to run those evidences by Georgian judiciary, and to present those evidences to the wider public and, as I've said, to international stakeholders.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that in a week time, or probably in 10 days maximum, we'll have a better understanding where we're heading to.
I see. Well, thank you a lot, Victor. Early in our conversation, I said I had personally expected a more dynamic and more strained, let's put it this way, a post-election situation in Georgia, especially by referring to and recalling past experiences. And it's part of Georgia's political culture to have these mass rallies, usually nonstop. I remember clearly the Gavrilov's night and how it triggered these months of mass rallies. Or we can recall the heavy societal resistance to the foreign agent law when it was first introduced by the ruling party a year ago. But this time, Tbilisi seems more or less calm, despite some rallies, I guess. On Monday, on the 4th of October, a rally took place in central Tbilisi. But still, is it what the opposition or civil society or whoever is opposing to the results of election can offer, or we should expect something more?
I do my best not to pick sides and to be somewhere in between. But when I'm saying in between, also not to lose a key message, one of the key messages. And one of those key messages is that continued discussions in Georgian society before the election day itself and in the course of electoral campaign, how much attraction the Georgian opposition had, and how much support they've been enjoying. Again, it's not about Georgian dream. We could have our own view about Georgian dream or etc., etc. But it's about Georgian opposition. So it is interesting to recall that what we've seen in the past, especially in relation to that famous or infamous law on these foreign influences, etc., etc.
Yes.
Georgian political parties or Georgian opposition was not at the forefront of that resistance.
Civil society was.
Civil society, students, youngsters, etc., etc. And it has resulted in what we've seen. Now, when this, and clearly enough, when after the elections day, any resistance, as you said, or any such a movement has to be led by the political parties, then we're coming across the same issue which I've just mentioned. How much support they are enjoying, and I'm not questioning now either results. Let me put it aside, for a second, if you will. But it's about an overall state of a Georgian political landscape, And I've said it's not just about one side of the coin, it's also about another side of the coin. And I think that I've been writing, I've been saying for several years already that if we take the Georgian fabrics and divide it into three ingredients, from my standpoint, into three ingredients, which is the Georgian the civil servants, or as I'm calling it, Georgian technocracy. The second one, which is Georgian society, Georgian citizens, and the third one, political parties, or the political class. And it's not just me, but many have been saying that the last one, which are the political parties, have been lagging behind. Have been lagging behind in terms of their state of thinking, in terms of their patterns, in terms of the standards, etc., etc. So I think that the crisis which we are experiencing these days, it's not just about the elections. It's not just about the results. And it's not just about the process. It's just about sort of, the diagnosis about the wrong state of that political landscape, which has to be reshaped, which has to be reinvigorated, which has to be renewed. So probably this is very, to some listeners, they could sound like a very much, philosophical discussions, but I think, the core of the problem is there. And if these elections had to provide Georgian society with a broader feedback, that broader feedback is about the broader state of the matters. So I'm just, conscious of time restraints. I'm just trying to give my to convey my understanding where the challenges are and why that protest. It is there. It has not gone anywhere, but probably it is not as noisy, probably not as dynamic, as you said, as some people could be expecting from outside. But we should also mention that, and I'm repeating again, we're still in the midst of the process, which has not been completed. We still have to see what would come up, and well, nothing could be ruled out.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it was quite obvious even before the elections, as you just explained, that the opposition looked weaker, if I can use this word, or fragmented. Let's put it this way. And at some point now, there are calls that the civil society or youth, as you said, could take the lead again. But do you think it's prepared, or is it ready to assume this leadership or responsibility ahead of the opposition parties?
There are multiple issues, Rusif, involved, and with all my recognition to that very important role which Georgian youth has played in the recent past, we also had to be fair and objective. This is the moment when political parties, regardless how bad or good they are, could not be pushed away. Because the process itself, the essence of the process now requires from them to run, probably not unilaterally, not exclusively, but there should be articulated actors. Because we speak about the elections, and the elections is about formalities. Elections is about the composition of the parliament. It is elections about the electoral code, and I think that's something which lays down the grounds for the opposition parties and for political actors, alongside with civic sector, alongside with youngsters, youth, etc. But still, they should be the driving force, because eventually, if someone has to, imagine for a second, take seats at the table and speak about the way forward, it should be specific. There should be specific actors. And those specific actors could be only in just the political parties and no one else.
Yeah, very good. Victor, earlier I briefly mentioned the claims about the Russian meddling in the Georgian elections. Why I use the word claims, because I don't have a concrete evidence, so I have to put it this way. But for several years, the very word Russian has been usually used mostly in negative connotations in the Georgian political discourse. I totally understand why, but when it comes to the ruling party, it may be referred to as a Russian dream, or the foreign agent law, which we spoke about earlier, can be referred to as a Russian law or Russian inspired law, etc. We can prolong this list. Nowadays, there are again attempts to put the affiliation between the Georgian dream and the Kremlin. To what extent do you feel this influence in Georgia in the election process, and why do many stakeholders usually strip the incumbent Georgian dream of their own agency? Because it is a party, it must be its own agenda, and but usually their agency is removed from the discourse.
This could be the most delicate and the most sensitive issue in the course of our discussions, and I'm just thinking how to address that in a best way, not to go beyond the limits when you don't have the very same evidential base, but at the same time not to betray yourself and not betray your perceptions. I don't know what could happen tomorrow or what could happen day after tomorrow, what the history of tomorrows would present to us, let's put it this way. But what we have today, that I keep saying that the Georgian, the saying that a tongue does not have bones, so you can twist your tongue in any way you wish. So of course, it's always fancy, it always looks like a blockbuster when you speak about that, the calls, instructions, etc., etc. It entertains media, it entertains listeners, and then your interviews become very popular and very viral. Mm-hmm. This is not the pattern, frankly speaking, which I'm pursuing with my colleagues at Geocase. But same time, when we speak about this so-called Russian pattern, when we discuss the Georgian dream, I'm saying that that alliance could be sort of a marriage of convenience or marriage for convenience, which does not mean that someone's calling every morning by noon or by close of the day, providing with some instructions, etc., etc. At least, I've not seen that. Those instructions, you've not seen them, and I think no one has seen. But the marriage for convenience, it's about two interests, willingly, intentionally, or unintentionally coinciding with each other. An interest by Georgian dream is reflected in a type of governance. And that type of governance aims at squeezing out the Western matrica as much as possible. And when I'm saying the Western matrica, it's about rule of law, accountancy, transparency, all the stuff which basically provide, for the fundamental and basic principles of political system as we see them, that fit for Georgia. It could be different for Azerbaijan, it could be different for other countries, but as we see fit for Georgia, we think that the Western matrica is something which is in our national interest. So, however, the pattern of the governance by Georgian is to squeeze out or to diminish to the largest extent possible, and from the Russian side, squeezing out the Western matrica. From Georgia also responds to their geopolitical expectations and to their, let's say, to their criteria as well. So I think, that is, again, I'm always refuting about anyone's allegations that there is a nexus. Could be, I don't know, but how we could present such a serious claims when an extremely serious claims which sort of are on the verge of betraying the national interest. At least I'm not in position of doing that, because that would be very unserious and very unfounded approach from my side. However, that same marriage for convenience is something which could be well acknowledged and well appreciated, and when we see that on examples of different statements by Russian MFA or different Russian stakeholders, how much they sort of welcome that criticism, which comes from the European Union and from the United States in relation to the policies of Georgian Dream. They welcome it, they acknowledge, they like it, they accept it. So that could be probably that interplay of interests. But however, if there is anything on top, if there is anything else, if there is anything behind, well, I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for your valuable input, Victor. I appreciate it.
My
and
pleasure.
I'm already looking forward to a new conversation sometime soon.